Welcome back to another video here on the channel. This time I will be talking about Fooled by Randomness, the first book written by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I will cover all of his books in future videos, the whole Incerto series, but let's start with the first one. While giving something the attribute life-changing always seems extremely exaggerated, I believe that the Incerto series was life-changing to me in the way that I now see the principles that Taleb talks about absolutely everywhere. Whether that's the ludic fallacy, the principal agent problem, black swans and other tail events, fragility, skin in the game, the Lindy effect, or just people completely misjudging risk and decisions. And of course we will cover all of these principles in this series.
So I normally don't travel for conferences, but when I got the opportunity to speak with Nassim, I had to come down from San Francisco. To me, he is one of the very, very few living natural philosophers, which is someone who practices science, does real work in science, but outside of a scientific institution, outside of the credential system. And I think his work is the kind of work that will last for 1,000 years. I don't say that lightly, but I think people will be reading. There are books that Nassim has written, and I won't insult him by calling him Dr. Taleb. Is that okay? I'll just call you.
Yeah, it is an insult to pick.
Yeah. So I won't insult you by calling you Dr. Taleb, but Nassim has written books that I think people will be reading 1,000 years from now. His new book, Skin in the Game, is fantastic. It's part 5 in his Incerto series, which includes Fooled by Randomness, Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, The Bed of Procrustes. It's written in a very timeless way. The concepts are very simple. There's not a lot of math to it, although there is a huge math backing to the Incerto if you want to get into it. And I would rather reread his work than anything on the bestseller lists, and I have. Many of his books I've reread. Now, the interesting thing is that I do get pushback when I say I'm talking to Nassim, because people say, well, he's so angry, he's so mean, he's so rude, because they can't fight him on the math, and they can't fight him on the principles.
The core themes of Taleb's work are our misunderstanding of risk and especially uncertainty, the symmetry and asymmetry of life, and the fragility and anti-fragility of systems. Even though I am teaching theoretical concepts here, I am not really a fan of abstract knowledge, and that's why I really like Taleb's book, because everything he preaches is extremely practical. As already mentioned, and you can assume by the title, in the first video of the series I will talk about his first book, Fooled by Randomness, the hidden role of chance in life and in the markets. The central idea of the book is that we are fooled by randomness because we underestimate randomness. We favor the visible, the embedded, the personal, the narrated, and the tangible. We scorn the abstract. We are wired for linear causality in a world that is not linear at all. Here are the talking points and topics I will cover in the first video. Alternative histories, frequency and magnitude of decisions and their outcomes, and also how to evaluate if a decision is good or bad, the hindsight bias, survivorship bias and regression to the mean, first principle thinking, and the traits of the market fool. Taleb introduces alternative histories as follows. One cannot judge a performance in a given field, war, politics, medicine, investments, by the results but by the cost of the alternative. Such substitute courses of events are called alternative histories. He gives an example of playing Russian roulette, which is an extreme case, but it gets the point across. If you survive a round of Russian roulette and win $1 million by doing so, the decision you made to play can't be judged by this outcome. In 5 histories you are a millionaire, but in one alternative history you are dead. So don't judge by the results you see. Alternative outcomes must always be taken into consideration. Let's look at alternative histories in the area of financial markets, because after all, Taleb was a long-time trader and that's where most of his observations come from. If I buy a stock that goes down in price afterwards, it doesn't mean it was a bad decision, because maybe there are more alternative histories in which the stock would have gone up. The outcome of decisions is not what we can use as a metric to measure the correctness of a decision. A mistake is not something to be determined after the fact, but in the light of the information until that point. And to stick with the example, even if there was a higher probability that the stock will go up, it doesn't mean betting on it going up is the right decision. If there is a 90% chance that something goes up by 5%, but a 10% chance it will go down by 90%, well, you should not bet on the stock going up. You need to multiply the probability with the potential payoff to get the expectation. Expectation is much more relevant in decision making than just probability alone. The frequency or probability of the loss in and by itself is totally irrelevant. It needs to be judged in connection with the magnitude of the outcome. This is actually how Nassim Taleb made a fortune as a trader. He was constantly losing small amounts of money, but when he won big time.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people after the fact, of course, particularly economists, are good at predicting after the fact. So they explain everything that happened.
A lot of economists are good at predicting after the fact. This is the perfect way to describe the hindsight bias, a bias that was pioneered by Daniel Kahneman but is important in the context of Taleb's work. When events happen, we tend to rationalize them through some causation when in reality we have no clue at all why something happened. We simply don't know what we don't know, and underestimate randomness not only when trying to predict the future, but also in hindsight. It is as simple as that. Past events will always look less random than they were. What makes our perception of the past even worse is the survivorship bias, that often appears in tandem with the hindsight bias. The term was phrased by the US Navy engineers during the Second World War. The statistician Abraham Wald looked at the bomber planes and suggested adding more armor to those areas that were least damaged. This sounds counterintuitive at first, but it actually makes a lot of sense, because you only see the planes that survived. The planes that were hit in the areas that seemed to be least damaged simply didn't come back. They are not among the survivors. So the spots that look like they were least damaged across the field are the ones that caused the most catastrophic effects if they were hit. Taleb offers an example with monkeys on typewriters. If you have infinite monkeys riding on infinite typewriters, one will come up with the exact Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's nothing crazy yet. The crazy part is that we as humans expect this exact monkey to come up with something great on his next try. That's the survivorship bias, and it's apparent everywhere. You only see the successful people and not the immense cemetery of people who tried but failed. A past performance does not indicate a future performance. He continues with the following thought example. Say you receive a mail from someone that says a certain stock will go up. Turns out true. Next week you get another mail stating it goes down. Turns out to be true as well. Repeat a few more times and you conclude that the person sending the mails must be either a genius or at least know something that you don't. And so you give him all your money to trade with it. What you don't know is that this person might send completely random forecasts to hundreds of people. He was wrong on 99% of them after a few consecutive forecasts, but you are in the 1% he got completely right. The more traders or forecasts there are, the higher the chance that someone has a streak of right forecasts by pure luck. Which leads us back to the hindsight bias. Instead of just accepting the randomness and luck that resulted in this one investor becoming extremely successful, being a survivor so to say, we look for ways to explain his success. Childhood experiences, was good at math in school, the role models his parents were, or other nonsense. And even worse, we now take these traits or experiences and conclude that these are the winner traits or survivor traits. So we start looking for people who have these exact traits or want our children to live through these experiences. What we don't realize is that there probably is no causation at all, it's just randomness. Sooner or later, there will be a regression to the mean. The trader won't be successful forever. He attributes his success to his intelligence instead of randomness and goes bust after risking a lot. And as always, we try to explain why he suddenly failed, through whatever reason we might come up with. Again, we are fooled by randomness because we underestimate it.
Does this require a mindset change?
To say the least. The thing I've been trying to convince people, particularly with the Black Swan and other writings that came with it, some academic writings, is that the paradigm these people use, including tie-wearing economists and Harvard professor and all these, they think that they want to start, they understand the world, all right, and they want us to take action based on their understanding of the world. I do the opposite. I wake up every morning knowing that I don't understand what's going on, okay? And that is the way we're going to have to operate. Our understanding of the world has proven to be extremely weak, all right? So let's learn to be more robust to human error, more robust to error.
If you're making policy.
A good strategy to avoid most of these biases is through first principle thinking.
How have you done this? These projects are so... These PayPal, SolarCity, Tesla, SpaceX, they're so spectacularly different. They're such ambitious projects at scale. How on earth has one person been able to innovate in this way? What is it about you? Can we have some of that secret sauce? Can we put it into our education system? Can someone learn from you? It is truly amazing what you've done.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Well, I think I do think there's a good framework for thinking is physics. You know, the sort of first principles reasoning. I mean, generally, I think there are. What I mean by that is boil things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there, as opposed to reasoning by analogy. Through most of our life, we get through life by reasoning by analogy, which essentially means kind of copying what other people do with slight variations. And you have to do that, otherwise it's mentally you wouldn't be able to get through the day. But when you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. Physics is really sort of figured out how to discover new things that are counterintuitive, like quantum mechanics. It's really counterintuitive.
It also helps to be aware of the tendencies of the market fool, as Nassim Taleb terms them. Number 1, overconfidence in historical data, models or measurements. Reality beats models. Some models are useful, but economical models offer a prediction of the future. That's where you should be more than careful. Number 2, getting married to your positions and not reconsidering that you were wrong, even though there is new information available. I really like Warren Buffett's quote on the confirmation bias to undermine this point. What the human being is best at doing is interpreting all new information so that their prior conclusions remain intact. Try to not be dogmatic, open your eyes, you are wrong more often than you are right. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool, said by the great physicist Richard Feynman. Number 3, not having a plan for taking losses, also called stop losses. The mindset that you can't lose money when you don't sell is nonsense. And number 4, when things go down, believing one was right but just unlucky. The market was more irrational than me. On the other hand, if the trade would have worked out, it was of course not due to luck but my superior intelligence and skills. Hindsight bias, survivorship bias and underestimating chance. Fooled by randomness at its best. I hope you liked this video and took something out of it. I highly recommend reading Taleb's books because this summary of course is nowhere near complete. In the next video of this series, we will be talking about the black swan problem, one of the most important ideas in risk analysis, decision making and probability. This does not only play a role in the financial markets, but science as well. I really appreciate it if you like the video and leave a sub for more in-depth content, and I see you next time.